It was tough. Whichever beach you were on, it was tough. It was a good job, well done. We opened the gates of hell, and I tell you, we made a good job of it.
45 years ago this week, Allied forces swarmed onto the beaches of Normandy, struggling for a foothold in Hitler's fortress Europe. Both sides knew the outcome of this battle would shape the course of history like no other. Remembering D-Day, this week on For Veterans Only.
For Veterans Only is made possible by funding from the Disabled American Veterans, a congressionally chartered nonprofit organization of wartime disabled veterans. The producers thank this station and other public television stations for their assistance and cooperation in making this program available. For Veterans Only is also telecast by the Armed Forces Radio and Television Service for the benefit of the men and women serving on active duty in our armed forces at home and abroad. For Veterans Only is a national television news magazine for America's veterans and a presentation of Veterans Productions USA. Reporting for Veterans Only is Jim Clay.
We began this week's broadcast with coverage of an unusual event that took place over the Memorial Day weekend in the nation's capital. It was a time to pay tribute to those who died in service to their country. But as Mary Miller reports, Memorial Day weekend in the nation's capital also served as a sober reminder that there are others who deserve our attention. 89,000 POWs and MIAs from World War II, Korea, and Vietnam.
How many people you need? I'll go get them for you. 50.
Get everybody's name and the state they're carrying.
How about Alaska? Do we have a volunteer for Wyoming?
This is the second year thousands of concerned Americans from across the land, mostly veterans, mostly from the Vietnam War, converged on the nation's capital on Memorial Day weekend, bringing a unified message. We want our MIAs and POWs home. It was a message this group would take by foot from the Lincoln Memorial to the steps of the Capitol.
Where's George? How come there are no United States senators here at this march? Where's their concern? China or American soldiers held in captivity?
POWs! MIAs! Bring them home! Alive! POWs! MIAs! Bring them home! Alive! POWs! MIAs! Bring them home! Alive!
Speakers at this Capitol rally minced no words. The government's to blame. It's done too little to free our boys and must now pass pending legislation to change that.
We need to find the policy that allows them to do this. In whatever dark and dirty basement it hides in Washington, D.C., and drive a wooden stake through its evil heart. It has no place in a democratic society. It has no place in the presence of those names engraved on that black wall. For that policy mocks the sacrifice of every man or woman who's died in the defense of freedom.
When a man or a woman enters the service of his or her country, there is an inviolate contract. And that contract is simple. If you or I are willing to risk our lives for our freedom, the least that our country can do is risk its prestige to make sure that we come home if we're put into some kind of an enemy camp.
The elected officials seem to think that the POW-MIAs, the forgotten heroes, have been lost in time. We say wrong. They are not forgotten, and that is why we are here this weekend to let not only our country, but the countries of Southeast Asia, Russia, and Lebanon know that we not only have not forgotten, but we will continue to be heard on the POW-MIA issue until our men and women are brought back to their country, America.
Because the families are so few in number and you are so large, we have to depend on the Vietnam veterans of America to bring home our prisoners of war. So scream bloody murder, because we've done everything else, and that's the only thing that's left.
I fought for this country in 3 wars, and I hated demonstrators with a purple passion. I thought they were the worst thing in the world, and then now here I am, after 26 years of service, 3 wars, I'm out demonstrating against my government. The first time or two, it just tore my heart out. Now I'm ready to tear theirs out. How many of you thought the government would just abandon you? Hold your hand up, please. Not a damn hand. I didn't think so, but I've sure found out they do. The flat ass walk off and leave you.
For the mother that cries every time she sees her son's picture hanging on the wall, there has to be freedom now. For the child, the son or the daughter of a prisoner of war that doesn't even remember what it feels like to be hugged by their daddy, freedom now.
Last year in October, fellow activist Donald Long and I were arrested in Laos, passing out the POW reward information. We did it because we were frustrated. Signing petitions, making phone calls, and writing letters has not gotten us anywhere for the last 15 or 20 years. They didn't let us go because they were humanitarian. They're not going to let the POWs go because they're humanitarian. The only way those men are coming out is if you make enough noise to get their attention.
And this group did make enough noise to get the attention of at least one Laotian government representative, if nothing more than a peek from a window.
Bring them home! Bring them home! Bring them home! Bring them home!
Release our POWs!
A contingent chanted in front of the Laotian consulate, accusing that country of holding our prisoners. A POW daughter even ventured to the door, hoping for a face-to-face talk.
It's frustrating. There's a lot of burnout. You know, I've been working on this issue for 18 years. That's how long my father's been missing in action. And it's just a little, it's great to see the enthusiasm still after all these years, because it has been long and tiring, and we don't get a lot of response from our government or the Laotian government.
I was a prisoner of war in Germany in the Second World War, and I equate with what they're trying to do here is getting POWs out. I would hate if I had been in the same position where I was forgotten by the government.
And I've got friends here who are my age, and they're getting more and more involved with the POW-MIA situation. And what they said earlier during their speech, that if we go to war tomorrow, who's to say that our country's not going to forget about us? I don't want to see that happen.
Well, by evening, the mood had shifted from frustrating to festive. One entertainer says his participation here was the result of a near-fatal auto accident a couple years ago.
My friends started taking me down to the local VFW, and they would have volunteers cook for them on Friday nights. And I was touched by these people. They treated me like one of their own.
So you decided to give something back?
Well, you know, they really gave me a reason to live. I was looking forward to getting up the next day and going out and doing something, and I couldn't wait to be with them again, because there's no half-stepping. When you're with them and you smile, it's an ear-to-ear smile, and it's real. So I cooked with them and I cooked for them, and when they asked me to be involved here, to be a part of this, I mean, hell yes, here I am. You know, this is it. This is where the heart is.
This is where the heart is for Britt Small and his group, too. They've been pushing and singing veterans issues for more than a half-dozen years.
We found out that we were effective, that we could reach people, that we could help people in all kinds of ways I never dreamed of. It's very detrimental to my career to do this. It was a choice between having a career in the music industry and doing what I thought was right. So I chose to do what I thought was right.
Small may be right, but his 5-year-old daughter Anna sure stole the show. And so they sang and hugged and kissed and danced the night away. But not before a prophecy from one of some 5,000 bikers who'd already started hitting town in support of the cause.
And tomorrow's going to be bigger and better.
And it was. These Harley-Davidson lovers, calling themselves the Rolling Thunder, biked in from all over the country for a ride for freedom through downtown D.C.
Well, the high was, I'm doing exactly what I want to do. I love motorcycles, and I always want to take a cross-country trip with a few guys. And next thing I know, a few guys turned out to be 156 guys. We all looked the same, we all did the same, and we all rode Harleys, and we wondered how we all got to the same place the same way without even knowing each other. And we all just had a good time. Going down the road, you know, like through Utah, it's beautiful country, and you're looking at the eagles flying, the openness, and get thinking about my brothers that never had a chance to ride a Harley, never got to see that part of the country, that started choking you up, you know. They've been robbed and their family's been robbed. So I rode for them, and then I had to pull back away and think about the vacation I'm going to take after this run's over and pull myself back together, but can't forget them. And especially the ones that we know are alive, we got to bring them back.
Well, what does the U.S. government say about all this? Although no prisoners have come home since the end of the Vietnam War, its official stand is this. Available evidence indicates there may yet be some live prisoners out there. It has pledged to investigate that evidence because getting them released is its highest priority. These folks don't exactly believe that and hope this weekend will make a difference.
This is more important than any Memorial Day sale. 2 for 1, bring your flag, get a free flag with a new car. This is what it's about, that people being able to come to the government, veterans, non-veterans, men, women, white, black, and saying, we want to know something. And if people will write to congressmen, you know, we all pull a lever. I do. My wife counts a vote, I count a vote. So they know that each person that writes and calls represents 5, 6, 7 people.
Because we're not going to forget it here. We're going to take it back to our own constituency. We're going to let our legislators know how we feel. We've been doing it, and we're going to continue to do it till it's effective.
Did you see all my brothers going hand in hand to fight for this freedom? Yeah, for in hand. If there's any brothers and sisters, anybody, children that want to remember their friends now, and family, come on out, call their name in the cadence. Let's not forget our POWs, their MIAs.
Sergeant James M. Ray, MIA, 18th March, 1968.
SFC Robert D. Owen, USSF, 52368, Laos. Bring him home alive, now!
My father, Colonel Peter J. Stewart, missing in action March 15, 1966.
God bless him.
And God willing, if they live, may they indeed come home. For Veterans Only, I'm Mary Miller in Washington.
Hundreds of wheelchair-bound veterans are saying yes to the challenge, getting ready to compete in the 9th Annual Veterans Wheelchair Games. The games start June 13th in and around Long Beach, California. Veterans with spinal cord injuries, amputations, and other disabilities which require the use of a wheelchair will be lifting weights, swimming and bowling, playing basketball and table tennis. They will also compete in track and field, slalom, and archery. The wheelchair games are sponsored by the Paralyzed Veterans of America and the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. That's beginning June 13th, the 9th annual wheelchair games from Long Beach, California. The peaceful beaches of Normandy still show the scars of that fierce battle 45 years ago. Thousands lie in rest there where they fought so bravely for Europe's freedom. Brian Patrick looks back to a date that will be forever remembered as D-Day, June 6, 1944.
Okay, we'll go. It was that simple phrase from General Dwight D. Eisenhower early in the morning on June 5, 1944, that launched the Allied invasion of Europe. The decision came after years of planning and a military buildup, the likes of which the world had never seen. It came after costly practice runs with many lives lost and a false start just one day earlier. Minesweepers had cleared shipping lanes and the first wave of the invasion force had started across the English Channel. Bad weather forced them to turn back and wait for new orders. Later that day, the order of the day came from General Eisenhower.
Soldiers, sailors, and airmen of the Allied Expeditionary Force, you are about to embark upon the great crusade toward which we have striven these many months. The eyes of the world are upon you. The hopes and prayers of liberty-loving people everywhere march with you. In company with our brave allies and brothers in arms on other fronts, you will bring about the destruction of the German war machine, the elimination of Nazi tyranny over the oppressed peoples of Europe, and security for ourselves in a free world. Your task will not be an easy one. Your enemy is well-trained, well-equipped, and battle-hardened. He will fight savagely. I have full confidence in your courage, devotion to duty, and skill in battle. We will accept nothing less than full victory. Good luck, and let us all beseech the blessing of Almighty God upon this great and noble undertaking.
It was an enormous undertaking, codenamed Operation Overlord. The first phase was dubbed Neptune, planning the assault and moving the huge armada from the British ports across the English Channel to the beaches of Normandy. The planning had seemed endless, and now D-Day had arrived. While this was a general military term for an unknown future date of attack, it was used for so long while planning the invasion of Normandy that it stuck, and to this day, D-Day refers to June 6, 1944.
The Battle of Normandy, in my opinion, was the turning point of World War II. If we had lost that battle and not been able to land in Europe, no one can predict what would have happened. But we were successful in Normandy, and because of that, we were able to continue into France and on through Germany and win World War II, and therefore made the world safe for freedom again.
The huge invasion in itself was no secret. Everyone knew it was going to happen, but the Germans had been skillfully misled into expecting the attack on Calais, just across the English Channel from Dover. There the channel was narrow, and a landing would put Allied forces closer to Germany. Instead, the Armada was joined at the invasion funnel called Piccadilly Circus and headed for the 5 beaches of Normandy. The Americans would hit Utah and Omaha. The British targeted Gold, Juno, and Sword beaches. As the thousands of ships made their way across the channel, paratroopers and glider-borne troops had already landed behind the enemy lines, and with the French underground were destroying bridges, roads, and railroads, cutting off German supply lines. Bombers were pounding the Germans from all sides as British and American battleships took their positions off the Normandy coast and began shelling relentlessly.
No one can visualize what happened unless they were here to experience it. Most of these craters were caused by the battleship Texas and a few heavy cruisers out at sea firing over our heads, destroying these bunkers. I don't know what would happen if they weren't out there.
The beaches were protected by a sophisticated network of obstacles, a defense known as the Atlantic Wall, masterminded by Field Marshal Erwin Rommel. Mines were attached to sharp iron and steel prongs below the surface to blow up landing craft. Millions of landmines lined the coast. Elaborate flamethrowers could belch fire at the approaching invaders. Heavy artillery batteries were encased in concrete, and pillboxes flanked the beaches, protecting German machine gun nests. Tommy Farr entered one of those pillboxes near Utah Beach just after it was cleared by American Rangers.
Below, they had living quarters. They had a cook on hand to cook their food for them, and they had left food on the table. It was still in the mess kit, sitting there on the table, and it looked very fresh, which although it was deep, about D plus 20, and in fact we were tempted to try some of it. We were afraid it might be booby-trapped or something.
Bad weather made it rough on engineers like Bill Headley, whose job it was to clear beaches of the obstacles so equipment could be brought ashore.
We had some floating pontoon raft boats, about 100, with light equipment tanks for jeeps and small combat team. About 70 of them got sunk, kind of water problem, and only 30 made it on the beach. So we had a lot of problems due to the storm, but we survived, we made it.
But at least at Utah, the storm also worked to the advantage of the invasion force.
It changed the air current, convection currents in the channel and in the bay, an eighth of a mile off on our objective, and we didn't get the full blast of the crossfire.
It didn't take long for the Americans to secure the Utah beachhead and begin moving inland. But Omaha Beach was a different story.
We were pinned down pretty much on the beach all day, and out of my 200 men, we suffered 102 casualties.
The Germans was on top there, and they could look down onto the beach, and they just had no chance at all.
On the Omaha beachhead, you lost some good Joes there, really did. They took really a hammering, and they were really brave, courageous lot of men now. And bravery from men, you know, that's not even decorated. No one knows they've done it without being cited for any commendation or anything, you know. Unbelievable what some men have done for their comrades, you know.
But the Americans battled on through what would become known as the longest day. Tony Story, a British communications officer aboard the HMS Sprague minesweeper, saw them slowly overcoming the odds.
Almost impossible odds. They kept going over the top, being driven back, and got back over there eventually.
While the fighting was not quite as fierce for British forces, taking Sword, Juno, and Gold beaches was no picnic.
It was so exasperating that everything's happening so quick. You couldn't sort of get into any specific details of anything sort of thing. You had the airborne going over into thousands, the parachute dropping down. You had these aeroplanes, you had the Navy shelling.
We were minesweeping ahead of the U.S. force. We went right into Omaha and Utah, right into the anchorage. And we kept going in, and I said, now when the hell do we turn back? Because I could almost have lobbed something right onto the shore.
The British fought side by side with Canadians and Free French soldiers. They employed a number of very unconventional war machines, such as tanks called funnies, and troops on bicycles.
It was most surprising to us all, the water that we had to get through, well out of our depth. We landed with extra ammunition pouches, and we invaded the beaches on push bikes. How the hell we got through with that, one will ever know.
The British had also encountered limited naval resistance while crossing the channel. But the German Luftwaffe had been so crippled by Allied bombing attacks prior to D-Day, it was never a threat to the invasion. Hitler's stubbornness and the rigid thinking that he demanded of his officers and the troops had backfired. With a few exceptions, they had stuck to the belief that the Normandy invasion was a diversion and that Calais was still the main target. At the end of D-Day, the Allied invaders had far more than a foothold as they began a sweep through France, a battle that would last 76 days. Less than a year after D-Day, Hitler's Third Reich would surrender, and Europe would again be free. The Battle of Normandy is said to be one of the greatest military victories of all time, but it was bittersweet for those who fought alongside the thousands who died.
I'm a very, very lucky person, so are all of us here that survived it. My old saying is that I wasn't ready to go upstairs. My name wasn't in the book, like his and his and his.
It's too costly for the enemy and ourselves too. And it's a shame to waste young lives like that. And I hope to God that none of our sons or grandsons have to go through anything like this again.
Where do we find such men? And the answer came almost as quickly as I'd asked the question. Where we've always found them in this country. On the farms, the shops, the stores, and the offices. They just are the product of the freest society the world has ever known.
Because veterans' benefits are constantly changing, the Department of Veterans Affairs has prepared a special booklet entitled A Guide to Veterans' Benefits. For a free copy of this informative and timely publication, write to VA Hotline, Post Office Box 1777, Louisville, Kentucky 40201. If you're experiencing a particular problem in qualifying for veterans entitlements, the Department of Veterans Affairs will provide you with direct assistance. Address your correspondence to VA Hotline, Post Office Box 1777, Louisville, Kentucky 40201.
Next week, Mary Miller has a special report from Washington on atomic veterans and some special benefits that are now available to them. Also from Washington, Brian Patrick continues his Valor series featuring a participant of the D-Day invasion, Senator Strom Thurmond from South Carolina. And from Nashville, Tennessee, Mike Victor reports on a new release by Lee Greenwood, a special request from the President of the United States. And the song's called God Bless Canada. All that and more next week on For Veterans Only. Until then, I'm Jim Clay. Thanks very much for joining us. And remember, when you need someone to count on, you can always count on a veteran.
For Veterans Only is made possible by funding from the Disabled American Veterans, a congressionally chartered nonprofit organization of wartime disabled veterans. The producers thank this station and other public television stations for their assistance and cooperation in making this program available. For Veterans Only is also telecast by the Armed Forces Radio and Television Service for the benefit of the men and women serving on active duty in our armed forces at home and abroad.